The School of the Cat is home to perhaps some of the most morally ambiguous witches in the entire continent. From Yad Karadin to Kian the Mad Witcher and all the others in between, these witches went from being monster hunters to essentially trained assassins, although do not be fooled, as they are certainly still no strangers to the monster hunting trade. One such witcher is Gaetan, who the famous White Wolf himself, Geralt of Rivia, happened to encounter during the events of The Witcher 3, when by chance he ended up in the village of Honorton and discovered him after a short investigation. Now this witcher is quite interesting, as the quest involving him touches on many moral implications. So for today's Witcher lore video, I'm going to discuss everything we know about Gaetan. This includes the key considerations you can make when deciding his fate, along with some lesser known Catskill witches he was connected to, and just some other information we can estimate about him based on what he told Geralt during this quest. But first, I just realized something. Even now, after all this time, you are still not subscribed? Well, it's right there. Go on. Join the Leshens on their conquest of the continent. It's easy. Okay, you done? Thank you for joining the school. Today's lesson is on a particularly morally grey individual, so listen closely and try and avoid these pitfalls yourself when out on the path. To begin, the history of Gaetan is shrouded in mystery, although we do know that he had a younger sister who he loved dearly and, like every other witcher, was taken as a child to be trained as a witcher. However, unlike Geralt, who was taken to Kaer Morhen, Gaetan was taken to the School of the Cat, and if my estimations about his age are accurate, he was most likely mutated at the School of the Cat's second home, the Dinmarv Caravan. This is because, although the School of the Cat did once inhabit Stigger Castle, due to Gaetan's age, it would make more sense that he was mutated in the Caravan setting using the more experimental methods. Now, in regard to his age, I have estimated that he is most likely around the age of 83 or 84 or 85, something like that. Now, my estimates for this come from a piece of information he revealed himself during the quest where the Cat and Wolf play with Geralt, where he stated that his younger sister died 10 years before the events of that quest. In the real world, during the Middle Ages, people could expect to live into their 60s or 80s, depending on if, of course, they survived infancy. So if we take this average age and put his sister's death at the age of around 70, then add 10 years for where the quest takes place, then add 3 or 4 years to take into account for any estimated differences in their ages, and bear in mind Gaetan would have been taken at quite a young age, so you can imagine they were similar ages, he was just a little bit older. We get around 83, 84 to 85 for Gaetan. Obviously, if Gaetan's sister died at 80, we could add another 10 years, which would put him at about 93, 4, 5. But this is just a general estimate. Of course, it could be 10 years younger, but this is the sort of age we could imagine he is or was. We can also assume that due to the experimental way in which he was mutated, it most likely had a significant impact on his moral compass and psychology. Even prior to the Catskill moving into the Dinmarv Caravan, which was also eventually destroyed, they were experimented on far longer and more intensely than the other witches in other schools, primarily in regard to their emotions. The mages who controlled Stigger Castle sought to make them completely emotionless, and those who were considered too emotional, for example, sometimes the effects that the mutations had was it actually made them even more emotional. Think Detlef. These stock, or witches, were simply discarded, and one such witcher eventually led a group back to the castle, slaughtering their former masters and founding the Caravan Home for the Cat School, which is an interesting subject I will discuss in the future. However, the mutations they used were still wildly unstable, unlike the other schools, making the Cat School witches' personalities interesting to say the least. So Gaetan was most likely raised as part of this nomadic group of witches, mutated with experimental methods, and then sent out into the world to fulfill contracts, be that on monsters or humans. And on one such contract, he happened to meet the famous White Wolf of the School of the Wolf, Geralt of Rivia. But before I get into this chance encounter, let's talk about this contract and what happened. Villagers in the small settlement of Honorton were experiencing some trouble with a nearby Leshen, and decided that they needed to hire a witcher. They managed to contact Gaetan, but one witness stated that unlike Geralt, they could see evil in his eyes. But take that with a grain of salt, because it was from a young girl who'd just seen something pretty awful happen to her family. Gaetan agreed on a sum, killed the Leshen, and returned for his payment. However, the village alderman only offered him 10 crowns, barely enough to cover his potion costs. What is also quite interesting to note is this village alderman's house is found by Geralt, and Geralt notes that considering the size of the village and the location being Velen, this individual did seem particularly wealthy, which leads into the next point because it is all to do with money, of course. Anyway, an argument ensued and Gaetan stated that if they did not pay him the agreed amount or at least more than 10 crowns, they would wish they had the Leshen back and he would not show them any pity. Then the alderman and the rest of the villagers suddenly changed their mood and told him that they had some gold hidden in a barn in the back of the town. He went with them and then they tried to murder him. Luckily, as they tried to thrust a pitchfork into his back, Gaetan turned and it only lightly pierced his flesh. He then went into a rage and slaughtered everyone in the village, including the innocents, only stopping at a girl who reminded him of his sister. Shortly after, Geralt arrived. He discovered all of this, talked to the girl, and then Gaetan. At this point, Geralt can either spare him or kill him. If you spare Gaetan, he will reveal the location of one of his stashes that interestingly also seems to have leftover monster trophies that Geralt speculates were from other similar contracts in which Gaetan was cheated out of his pay. Geralt can also discover a note from another surviving cat school witcher, Joel, which reveals that the School of the Cat caravan had been attacked and destroyed by soldiers, killing Axel and Cedric, two cat school witches, and another witcher, Schrödinger, who may or may not have been killed, a reference to the famous Schrödinger's cat thought experiment, but now of course an official member of the School of the Cat. Alternatively, Geralt can kill Gaetan, and interestingly enough, even if you give him some swallow to even the playing field, he'll attempt to blind Geralt and finish him off swiftly, indicating a lack of honor and integrity on Gaetan's part. In fact, even Geralt notes how the massacre at Honorton was not Gaetan's first, and Gaetan, instead of denying it, asks Geralt not to lecture him. These are all very important considerations when playing this quest. Yes, he was taken as a child, mutated with even more experimental witcher mutagens than typical witcher, and then constantly cheated by humans after risking his life to help them, and also, most likely after being called a freak by every other person he met, and then they also tried to kill him, but he also went on a killing spree killing innocents. Most likely this also happened on multiple occasions, and he even tried to trick a fellow witcher, despite an honest attempt by Geralt to give him a dignified end, which to me says a lot about his character. Perhaps you don't want to kill him, as witches are already dying out and one less witcher in the world means one less of these fascinating monster killers, or maybe you don't consider it your place to deal out judgment, or perhaps you want to kill him and preempt any future massacres from this individual, or you want to seek justice. I'm curious what everyone decided to do in this quest, as it certainly is a tricky one. Now before I get into how I typically handle this quest, I just want to talk about some features of Gaetan, such as his combat style and armor and abilities, that sort of thing. So for Gaetan's armor and abilities and weapons, they're of course quite similar to the typical witcher. In combat we can see he uses Quen active shield mode, Ard, and of course he also uses bombs. He also uses potions, which is mentioned at the start of the quest when Geralt tests his blood and he mentions there being wolfsbane, earthball, alcohol, that sort of thing. And he also has a sword called Tegere, which is quite difficult for me to say, and you can loot this from him if you defeat him, or also from his stash, which he'll give you a map for should you spare him. His armor also appears to be the basic feline or cat school armor, not any of the upgraded versions, and I imagine like any normal witcher, he is most likely capable of every sign and using a variety of oils and bombs and that sort of thing, but in the combat they don't show us much, just Ard and Quen active shield mode. In regard to how you can defeat him in a boss fight, it can be slightly challenging, but if you know how to parry in The Witcher 3, you'll be completely fine. It's very, very easy. I'd say that the other way would be just to Quen up and roll around. That's how you beat basically everything in The Witcher. Just Quen up, attack, roll away. Very easy. Maybe get a couple ignis in there. So what do I do? Typically, when I meet Gaetan, I let him live. And the reason I typically let him live is because I don't want to deal out judgment on fellow witchers. I let Letho live, I let Gaetan live, any witcher I find, Yad-Karadin, everyone, I typically let live. Sometimes if it comes to Yad-Karadin, I have let him get killed in the past by Lambert because I just think, well, that's up to Lambert. But if I have the option, I let witches live, because I like witches, I like the idea that there are more of them and I'm not slowly making them more extinct, and I just want to keep them around. I know that morally what Gaetan did is incredibly questionable, killing innocents, but to be fair, they did try and kill him, and I also like to put myself into the mind of Geralt, and I think, of course, part of me thinks Geralt would stop him if he's going to go around killing innocents, but as Geralt notes himself, he is known as the Butcher of Blaviken. Geralt has certainly had moments that we might not even be fully aware of in which he may have killed innocents. I mean, think of the amount of soldiers and knights, etc. you kill as Geralt. I mean, we assume these are all bandits, but some of them could have been forced into it and we're not aware, right? I think that The Witcher is very morally grey, and it's not like Gaetan just went there and killed them all. And I think Geralt can also most likely sympathize with people cheating him out of the money, and it wasn't that led Gaetan to kill them, it was the fact that they tried to kill him. And Geralt knows what humans can be like, because in the books, spoilers, he also technically gets killed by a pitchfork. So I think from the way in which he knows Gaetan could have been killed, he probably empathizes quite a lot, especially with how humans typically treat witchers for essentially doing their job. I mean, this is how witchers make money, this is how they survive. Essentially not paying him and tricking him into doing something for them is almost like saying, well, we're condemning you to not being able to eat today. And the other aspect is the fact that the alderman obviously had money. He could have sold some of his trophies to then pay for this, but he didn't want to. Does it excuse killing the innocents? Of course not, and I think that's where it becomes incredibly morally grey, and it's very hard to decide. I would say I could go either way. If it was really me, I probably would say he shouldn't really be around, but I like keeping witches alive, and that's what I'll typically do. And I'm very curious what you all decide to do when you come up with this quest, because this character is incredibly interesting, and this is in fact the first quest I recorded for YouTube that made me decide to make these lore videos at all, so it's been a nostalgic one for me and very fun to play. So thank you for watching today's video, I really do appreciate it. If you enjoy this sort of content and want to support it, please just like it, subscribe, comment your opinion down below, watch some of the other videos, check out my Twitch, support what I do and just help me keep being able to do this. I really do appreciate all of that. Check out my other channel as well, just give it a watch if you have time. Very much appreciated, everyone. And of course, a big thank you to the members. I really do appreciate the direct support. This is very helpful for the videos. I want to have your names up here in every single video, and thank you so much guys, very much appreciated. And just anyone that watches, it's also very kind. I hope you guys enjoy these videos and just enjoy the Witcher universe with me, because I love making them and it's very fun to talk about this all. Let me know what sort of videos you'd like to see soon, or any subjects you'd like me to cover. I really do read the comments and it could seriously influence what the next video is, so thank you to everyone that does that. Anyway, Witchers, thank you for watching today's Witcher lore video, and I will see you in the next one. Good luck on the path, and have an awesome rest of the week.